Hi, Ruby Lane. We're back at the Grovian Doll Museum, and we're with our friend Judi Smart. One of the things about being a part of the doll community, you have exposure to all different kinds of things. And Judi and I are both founding members of the Carmel Doll and Toy Study Group. And in our 26-year history, we've had over 209 programs, original programs. We've only ever repeated 2 programs twice, and one is Door of Hope Dolls. And when Judi first gave that program many, many years ago, I didn't know what a Door of Hope doll was. But once you have the knowledge and exposure, you start to fall in love with items. Earlier today we had Beyond the Pale dolls of color, and a lot of those pieces were fantasy pieces that were made by German doll makers and French doll makers that are not actually depicting real life and perfectly costumed, but the Door of Hope dolls do. So we're going to go to Shanghai, aren't we?
Yes.
So these are the Grovian's Door of Hope dolls. Now Judi and I just had an argument of who had a better collection. I think she has a better collection than we do, and she thinks that we do. So Judi, if you were going to look at this table as a seasoned collector, and could you just tell them a little bit about the Door of Hope mission and what they were doing, what they were all about?
Well, the mission collected girls that were left on the streets. They could be prostitutes, they could be anything.
Child prostitutes.
Yes. And they would bring them in, they would give them a place to sleep, they would give them an education, a way to take care of themselves. So that was through sewing and handwork. So they did not just doll clothes, but they did handkerchiefs and shoes. Yeah. Yes,
and we brought these out because they were just in the case of, just to show, not to have just a row of dolls, but these little, and these are like little tigers, aren't
yes.
they? And we thought, oh, well, we'll just put these in. These very well could have been made by the Door of Hope mission.
Easily.
Because when you look in the inside lining, I've seen that material before. I don't know where, but they use that kind of cotton in. So there's a possibility that these are Door of Hope items. And in Shanghai, wasn't it quite dramatic how the girls had to escape to get to the mission?
They had a little storefront that was in the district, the red light district there, that they could get to, and they'd have to run down the street with some mad lady screaming at them.
Because they were property.
Oh yeah, they were owned like slaves, sex slaves, literally. And then they would take them and they'd have to argue with the authorities. They'd go to court for them as well. So it was pretty amazing. And then they wanted them not to have to go back, and most did not.
That's wonderful.
Many married. They had an opportunity to get married, and some, started their own small businesses. But it was a real blessing. And this is our Christian missionaries.
They did that.
Yeah.
And then one of the main, those had to have revenue, so the items that they made, and then of course then you had the dolls that they created, which really depict just about every class in their society.
Yeah, the doll heads were made by artists in the area, and they were made from pear wood, so that, look how they look Chinese. They kind of have a yellow tint. And I love, because each one is different. You have old faces, young faces.
And each one is an individual work of art. There's no two that are exactly.
The ones you were just showing here are mourning. They don't mourn in black the way that we do. It's in white.
And aren't those professional mourners that you would hire to go to your? And aren't these little prayers? Aren't these pieces meant to be prayers? Yes. And those little cotton balls are tears, aren't they? More than I do.
No, that's fine. They are.
That's really interesting to point out.
And we should show you the back. And this is just beautiful linen, and just really beautifully sewn. And the girls did those tiny little minute stitches, and I've never known any of these being made by machines. I think they're all pretty much handmade, the costumes.
Wow.
They were made for the tourist trade. And what's interesting is that they have all the different, what do you call it, strata of the society. So you have the wealthy and the less wealthy and people mourning. You have over here.
Here we've got Grandma and
yes.
Grandpa. And if you look at Grandma, she has her little bound feet. So she wasn't working for a living, Grandma.
No, look at that.
No.
She couldn't run away.
No. And this one is also, too, a really wonderful piece and very, very rare to have. That's a monk. So it's a Buddhist monk. And it's not one that is, probably wasn't for a tourist. You know, it doesn't have fabulous colors and beautiful embroideries. It's just simple. And I would imagine that probably wasn't the greatest seller of all time. But the layers of clothing are just spectacular.
What are the little indentions on the top of his head?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure that there's a reason for that. I don't know if that's just, hey, you know, us guys, you know, you have hair loss. But I would imagine that his head would have been shaved. So I don't know if that's, I don't know why that's there.
Okay.
I'm sure that there's a viewer out there that knows exactly why, and they'll write us and tell us. Here's the bride and the groom, and I think that those are probably some of the most popular characters. And Judy and I had a debate because you do see the brides with a veil, which is just a piece of silk that goes right over their face. And this does not have a veil, and it doesn't really have a place to attach it. The back is decorative also. And in her collection, she has a bride that's veiled and one that's not.
Right.
So we have to kind of think, in this marriage, he knew what he was getting. In the other marriages, you didn't know. It was a surprise. But
The
look
other
at the
interesting thing is that the hair is different. Mine are not the same as this one. Each one is unique.
yeah, they are all unique. But look at the colors and the embroidery work that they did. I mean, you can just see. I think you can feel the appreciation that they had of having this opportunity. And, you know, I mean, just to be able to sit and work with beautiful fabrics and beautiful thread, you can feel that. But you can also feel the very, I don't know that this, maybe the feather stitching originated in China, but when I see feather stitching like this, it's very European too. So it probably did originate in China and was taken up. And then look at the beautiful trim along here. And she's just in really
Spectacular.
yeah,
condition.
it is. Because it would be very easy for them to fade out. I mean, they do fade. One thing we do have at the Grovian, we talked about gloves and how I don't use gloves. But one thing that we do have is we have state-of-the-art lighting. So nothing fades here, nothing, there's no heat. You know, it costs lots of extra money to do it, but it's worth it because you could lose these in fluorescent lighting. They would be gone. The colors would be gone. Judy, tell everybody about these cuties.
Oh, this is the kindergartner, and they are the
Look at that.
cutest twins.
Look at that hat.
I know.
Oh.
Just adorable. And look at the little shoes. The
Oh
little
my
rabbits.
goodness.
Aren't they
Are
precious?
they
Oh, it's
rabbits
so
or
whimsical.
kittens?
Or
Oh,
foxes
could be
even.
Yeah.
I think they're foxes.
Look at that.
Don't you think they're
They
foxes?
sort of look like
But
foxes.
whatever they are, they're just precious. So cute.
That is amazing.
These are really popular.
How many Door of Hope dolls do you have, Judy?
Oh, I don't know. Haven't counted. And this is our Amma with her baby on her back. So she's
like the governess
Yes.
or the babysitter?
and look how beautiful.
Beautiful.
Isn't that pretty?
And it's interesting, the story of the Door of Hope dolls are what hook you in. And then you study it and you see the power of the doll, how the doll can help the world. and should still now be helping the world. That's what hooks you in. But then once you kind of start looking at the quality of the dolls and how they were made, that's what keeps you there. And like, I don't think this is just a small collection, and I realize we need more. There's things that we're missing, and we'll do that over time. But one thing that we have that's really, really special is the policeman. So if you think of the human drama that was going on with this whole story of, you know, children being sold into prostitution and legal things and missionaries, and it's like, where does he fit in? Was he a good guy or was he a bad guy? Mm-hmm. It's probably 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Yeah, but still, you can see he's got a very sweet face, so I think he was depicted as the good guy. But this is one that you don't see every day. No. So if you're on Ruby Lane tomorrow morning having your coffee and one of these comes up, Judy will be there.
Do you have one, Judy?
No, I don't. I'm just kind of,
This is a kind of a neat pair too. And you know, they're not glamour pusses like, you know, the bride in with the silk and the beautiful embroidery, but these are farmers, and they're actually in raincoats. That is considered a raincoat. And they do not have shoes because they're barefooted, and you know, they're of the peasant class out in the rice paddies, but they're depicted. And actually, when you know all that and you know the story, there's a natural beauty to them, you know, and they're beautifully depicted. And here's the real story about them. They're actually very fragile. To have that, all this, it's probably some kind of grass or hay that survived, whatever they could find. I mean, you know, that's very susceptible to breaking down and falling apart. So that it survived is really kind of neat. And we had two, and I thought, well, we don't need to have two. And then I realized that we kind of do, because otherwise they just are lost. And the two gives it a little more visual, because a museum or a collection is about telling a story. And right here we kind of have a little microcosm of a culture that even in China today is disappearing.
So what can these dolls do for modern society?
Well, I think that when you share, you know, I've talked about dolls all over the world, in various, from ladies' clubs to, you know, serious doll groups. And what they can do is that volunteers, whether it's, I mean, here basically we had a religious organization.
Yes. Well, there were many of them. There were a lot of different churches, whether they were Lutheran or Baptist or Catholic, that they all would donate to this orphanage. We, as a country, were very giving. And a lot of people malign the missionaries, but they did so many good things that nobody else in that society that they were in would do.
Exactly.
And they would take it up. They took care of lepers. They took care of all kinds of people that were just left out.
And I think that I mean, there's a need for that today. I mean, maybe later on today we'll go have a little looky-peeky at Miss Rose Percy. There's an example of a doll in our time that has raised over $400,000. And trust me, the charities, Judy was here a couple of weeks ago, and the charity walked in the door. They had no idea what hit them. They had a need for, I called them up and I did my investigation as I'm talking to them. And I said, what is your greatest need? How is your transportation system with getting veterans to and fro from appointments? And they said, well, we just totaled our van. So I said, well, I think you should come on Sunday because we might have something that could help you with that. And we were able to give them $40,000 to buy a new van. And their mouths were hanging
Amazing.
open because it really took a huge strain off of them that they could serve their clients and not have to figure out where do we get the money. So really dolls have a long history of working for benevolent causes, and it should be, in a way, there should be a revival of that. And I know that there are people around the world that are doing, like for women, micro loans, which I think is a wonderful thing. You know, a micro loan for someone in India where a woman gets a $1,000 loan to start a business making ribbons. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of money, but if to the average American, but it's a fortune for them, and it has been very successful. So dolls can be used. We kind of want to try to inspire people to do that. Doll clubs are great at that, but doll clubs sometimes miss the point, which is the end game. So you have to all row in the same direction to get to the end game. And that's how really Rose Percy has been able to really be successful. And she's kind of part of this whole thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, for teaching us and sharing your passion for the Door of Hope legacy and their dolls.
And there's some wonderful books out there on the subject. And,
Yes.
they really are a fun thing to collect.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see you
We'll
soon.
see you later.
See you in a bit.